Welcome to the Friday edition of The Panel, presented by Sport Chek. Tony Brar here, standing alongside Bob Stauffer and Jack Michaels. Gentlemen, the Oilers kind of been back and forth in terms of wins and losses since 2019 began, but they got picked up a huge victory in a building that they haven't had much success in for the second straight win, Bob.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've discussed, in the last panel, the Oilers had 7 games basically left before they were going to go on the All-Star week / bye week, and that they needed to get 5 or 6 wins during that stretch, and right now they're 3-1. And, the Buffalo game, maybe you throw that off as a bit of a one-off in terms of the offense created. Vancouver's been a tough matchup. Travis Green has their players playing hard. They're disciplined. Jacob Markstrom's been a different goaltender since he's gone to Vancouver. Certainly over the last couple of years, and maybe in the past when he was down in Florida, it's been a challenge for Edmonton. And that was a playoff intensity game that had some emotion in it. It was a fun game to be a part of as a broadcaster. And I think for Oilers fans, there should be at least some excitement that they've gone 3-1 here over the last 4, but that's saying they got 3 critical games coming up.
I think when you look at the Western Conference, it's as wide open as we predicted. Perhaps not at the top. Really what the West has is a wild scramble actually at the top and then at the bottom. There's nothing in the middle, and that's where Edmonton needs to find itself. And quite frankly, the way things shake out, a win on Saturday and the Oilers could be in 6th. All of a sudden, the Western Conference. They could have the 6th most points accumulated in the Western Conference, potentially with a win over Calgary. And they're also getting the Flames on the 2nd of a back-to-back and their 3rd and 4 nights. The last time that happened, Edmonton shut out Calgary 1-0. So Ken Hitchcock talked about the schedule a couple weeks ago, and he said we need to take advantage of it. Even the players recognize that they've got an opportunity here. Again, Bob talked about it. 6 of the 7 games, Calgary being the outlier, are against teams not currently in a playoff spot right now. So you need to take advantage of it when you have it, and you've also got those games at home. Edmonton's done a good job to this point. This back-to-back against 2 teams that can hurt you. Calgary, though, on short rest, and also Carolina's dangerous. Hurricanes are an X factor, and we've seen that over the years when the Oilers play the Canes. No matter what the record is, you don't know what necessarily Edmonton's going to do, but you also don't know what Carolina's going to bring to the table. So I think Sunday brings as much intrigue as Saturday does.
Jack, you talked about how important these points are in the standings, but Ken Hitchcock always talks about how he needs more from more guys. One of those guys, since the calendar year flipped over, has been Milan Lucic. I mean, just maybe talk about the revelation. Jack, maybe we'll start with you. 3 goals in 2019. We all know that 2018 just wasn't his year. Just maybe talk about maybe how important he will be for the success of the Oilers moving forward and the other guys in the depth chart.
Well, that's one more than he had in 2018. And I think Milan has benefited from kind of the same things that Ken Hitchcock has brought with his belief in Jujhar Khaira, with his belief in Jesse Puljujärvi. He's talked about them both publicly and privately as playing good hockey, and it's a matter of time before the results came. I thought Khaira's best game was in Vancouver. Maybe his best game in the NHL was in Vancouver. Forget the shorthanded goal. He was all over the place. He made a lot of good plays in that hockey game. Jesse Puljujärvi didn't have his strongest game, but he's gotten some extra ice time. Zach Kassian has been singled out by Ken Hitchcock as a guy who could play with anyone, and he scored twice in the same game. Lucic scored twice. I think as you get later in the year and the goals become harder to come by, and Bob makes a good point when he says he thinks 7-2 is going to be an outlier. It certainly will be in the last 20 games. And that's where guys like Kassian and Brodziak and Lucic and hopefully Toby Reeder, he's the next guy on that list. That's where maybe they become more valuable.
The other part of it for me is when you take a look at how close everybody is to everybody else in the standings, no one's out of it, which means the amount of opportunities to potentially make deals, to me, are still quite limited. Like, there's, even take a look, I mean, the Oilers went on a run where they traded for a couple defensemen and got Petrovic and Manning. Anaheim made 4 or 5 deals. Yeah, they moved out Cogliano for sure, but they didn't really make any substantial.
Can you even say Arizona and St. Louis are out of it?
No, everyone is in the mix. And so people thought, well, maybe Doug Armstrong was going to move a couple guys out in St. Louis. Not right now. You look out the Eastern Conference and people thought maybe Detroit would move out a couple bodies. Not right now. So what I'm saying here is maybe we thought at one stage, well, during the All-Star break and the bye week there'll be some trades. I'm not convinced that the Cavalry's coming via trade until quite late. And so it's going to have to be done internally for the Edmonton Oilers to provide some support scoring for their top 4 guys who've been pretty much consistent offensively all year long.
The other thing this week, Tony, is it was a big week for Mikko Koskinen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one point I want to make. He needed to have a big week, and he got it. And that, I thought, was critical because his numbers in game had fallen off in the last couple weeks. And the last time Edmonton got hot, 9-2-2 under a 13-game stretch, he was really carrying the mail. So I thought that was important, too. He had 2 big starts. I would suggest his 2 biggest starts of the year because in his own mind, he must have been thinking, am I there yet?
Well, not just him. The organization needs to know what they have with them as well. I mean, they've got 2 unrestricted free agent goaltenders moving forward. You got to know where you're at with these guys.
Yeah. And Cam Talbot has also seen an uptick in his numbers since the calendar year has turned over. But 2 guys that have always seen an uptick in numbers is Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer.
What'd you pay him?
You know,
Bob, don't tell him.
I didn't pay him anything. You know that.
Just don't tell him how
Somebody
much.
else might have paid him for me, but it wasn't me.
Let's just say my Starbucks was covered this morning. But for Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer, I'm Tony Barr. This has been the panel presented by Sport Chek.